This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome. Thom Hartmann here with you. Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. And on the line with us right at this moment, hang on just a second, let me put him on the phone here. Alexander Zaitchik. He is the freelance journalist, author of 3 books. His contributor to The Nation, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, and many others. His latest book, Out of the Ooze, the story of Dr. Tom Price. Previous 2 books, Common Nonsense, Glenn Beck and the Triumph of Ignorance, and The Gilded Rage, Wild Ride Through Donald Trump's America. Alex, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here, Tom.
Thank you. And I should say your website is zaitchik.com, zaitchik.com. And so, Alex, tell us about this book. Or tell us about Dr. Price, I guess. Right.
Well, he's in his very short stint as Secretary of Health and Human Services, he's become somewhat infamous. So I probably don't need to tell your listeners that there is a lot of swirling controversy around his head that is mostly stemming from his heavy trade in stocks while sitting on the House Ways and Means and budget committees. Drug stocks that generally involved healthcare services and big pharma, which were policy areas that he was most active, and of course now is the most influential person in the country. So, the details of all these trades and, what some presume is, if not illegal, then certainly unethical, almost as important as the larger kind of thing that he represents, which is a profit-driven healthcare system. And he sort of is a caricature of this and has been a self-dealing player in this world for his entire career, going back many decades. But the larger point is sort of what he represents in the system that has allowed him to thrive and profit greatly from over the decades.
So tell us about what he represents and what that system is.
Well, it's a system that is based on private market actors and their drive for shareholder value. And that sort of trumps the delivery of the ultimate social good, which is healthcare for our citizens. The price of drugs is, a scandal, and they are that way because of the power of the industry that Tom Price has been an errand boy for. The price of medical instruments, from joint replacement parts to wheelchairs, the bills that go to Medicare are much higher than they should be because Tom Price and his allies have been fighting more rational, cost-saving approaches to billing for Medicaid and Medicare. And then, the larger scandal of making sure that those programs are cut, not expanded. Tom Price has been an active leader in the fight to make sure Medicaid is not expanded, especially to poor children with S-chip. In his home state of Georgia, he was leading the fight against S-chip expansion as a state senator, and then he continued that fight in the House, and now he's got a bunch of people around him who feel the same as him, that Medicaid should be shrunk and gutted, not expanded, and he has a similar vision for Medicare. Yeah. It's just a brutal philosophy that he embodies and always has.
I remember pretty vividly, actually, about 8 or 10 years ago on this program, I was doing the show from Portland, and Congressman Brian Baird was a Democrat representing Vancouver, Washington, the southern part of Washington State, just north of Portland, and a former psychologist and a really decent man. And he came on our program and told the story about how he had walked into a Republican member of Congress's office, and I believe it was Tom DeLay, but I could be wrong. But in any case, he'd walked into this guy's office for a meeting that he was going to have with him, and there were a couple of staffers in this kind of outer office outside the congressman's office who were day trading on computers. And he was like, what are these guys doing with, E-Trade or whatever it was? You have staffers day trading. Isn't that against the law? And this Republican congressman told him, oh, no, it's perfectly legal. And we have an exemption from the insider trading law. So when we have legislation coming up, defense, drugs, whatever it may be, and we know that it's going to help a particular company or industry, we can make a lot of money. And it turned out that there were, and so Brian Baird, I mean, he blew the whistle on that on this show, and then took it to other networks and things like that, and for, Jesus, seems like it was about 4 years, was fighting to get legislation passed to ban that. Ultimately, it did become a bit of a scandal, and in fact, we had a conversation with Nancy Pelosi on this program about it maybe 2 years later, in which she said that, to the best of her knowledge, no Democrats were engaging in this kind of behavior, but it was fairly common on the Republican side. I thought that they had banned this a few years back. How does Tom Price, get away with doing this, or did they exclude the members themselves and just cut out the staffers?
Right. It's a little complicated. There is something called the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, which is a reform Obama signed into law, I believe, in 2012. To curb insider trading by members of Congress. So there's also a limit on how much they can trade. I think it's $15,000 on stocks that are related to their particular area of activity in Congress. And then, of course, federal members have to divest. Price had to sell off all of his stocks when he assumed HHS secretary position.
So when he was in Congress, he was trading stocks.
He was legally trading a large amount of healthcare related stocks, up to $300,000 and probably more. We just don't know.
Right. While he was on the committee that was overseeing those companies, right?
Oh yeah. While he was running the budget committee, and while he was on Ways and Means overseeing, involved in healthcare policy.
Right. And this
is very blatant, and we should mention that Fareed Barar, the DA who was investigating these trades, was fired the day after he assumed office. So we may never know exactly where the line between unethical and illegal is crossed.
Right. Preet Bharara, the federal U.S. attorney for New York City, or New York State, I'm not sure what, covered New York State. He was looking into Tom Price, was he not? I mean, wasn't, in fact, there's some speculation that going public was what provoked Trump to fire him.
It certainly seems in odd timing, and he may very well have been preparing an indictment, although he hasn't spoken publicly on that.
Wow. So how did this, very, very sleazy Georgia congressman end up in charge of Medicare, Medicaid, and Health and Human Services?
Well, I mean, he's always been very good at what he does, which is representing the industry and right-wing healthcare policy. And he was very close friends with Paul Ryan and that whole, community of sort of right-wing policy guys.
Right-wing corporate shills.
Exactly, yeah. And he was their guy. I don't think Trump was too familiar with him when he came into office. And it does seem a little bit odd that he would be Trump's nominee, because Trump, obviously, we all remember, was elected on some very loud promises to protect Medicare and provide health care for everyone, or improve on, the current system, at least. And Tom Price has made a career out of trying to cut the current system even into smaller bits and pieces and balance those cuts on the backs of the poor.
Right.
So he was Paul Ryan's guy, and he probably, in some way, he kind of is the perfect guy for the job, given our system. I mean, he's like the grotesque manifestation of it in some way. I mean, this is a system based on a market mechanism, and he represents everything about that mechanism. He represents the companies that profit off both sides, that generally don't care about those who can't afford its products and services. And in some ways, he's the HHS secretary of this system, and this country in some way deserves, insofar as this country and its leaders have failed to come up with an alternative. And now that conversation has started to kind of pick up. And I think that in some way, Tom Price, being as corrupt and as sort of sadistic as he is, could be useful insofar as people realize, like, this is the face of it, just unmasked.
Yeah,
and it's really
and even though he has an MD after his name, this guy is not friendly to healthcare policy, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that MD after his name is sort of part of a larger tradition of big city specialist doctors. He's an orthopedic surgeon. And traditionally...
Hang on, Al.
Sure thing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I'm sorry, Alex, we're out of time, but the book is Out of the Ooze, the story of Dr. Tom Price. Alexander Zaitchik is the author, and check it out. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Tom.